All right, I'm going to show you my database setup. I met with Dr. Getty and we discussed the primary key uniqueness, and we came up with an interesting solution that I will go ahead and share with you now. So I have still have three tables, and this is my user table. Notice for my primary key, I'm using the word user ID, all one word, all lowercase, no camel case, just one word. Okay. Look at my contract table. I have contract ID, again, all one word, all lowercase. And then blog ID is my foreign key. And I've all one word, all lowercase also. And if you go back over and look at blog, it is all one word, all lowercase. Okay. To get your foreign key structure for the blog ID, what you'll want to do is after you create it, come over and index this line. And then when you click on the actual database itself, you can go over to your designer and you can set up that relationship by saying create a relationship. And you'll just click that create a relationship and you'll click the blog ID and then the blog ID here, and it will set up that relationship to be a little circle. Move my mouse off it so you can see it, but a little circle to a big circle, which means one blog can have many contracts. All right, now I'm going to talk about what we need to change since we changed it from just ID to user ID. So notice that the table name, I'm inside my user class, the table name is giving us this word user, which is what we used at the beginning of the database. In the database column, we used that at the beginning of the ID. So if we go into our database object class, and my concern was in the actual query, so we can just come down and look at some of the queries. Here's the find by ID. Okay, this find by ID query, we can say, well, we're passing in the ID and we're using it here as ID, but it could be any ID. So this is technically okay because this is just a variable. I can call this fish, and as long as I say fish here and fish here, I'm okay. But right here where it's actually talking to the database, we need to change this so it's more of an object, more of a variable, and less of a static lowercase ID. So you'll notice here we used static table name. So it says select all from and whatever table we're using, whether it be user, blog, or whatever. So if we come over here, we can copy this and we can paste it right here. Now we'll want to make sure we add a quote after the where. So it should say where, and then this is the table name, okay? And we want to make sure there's no space, okay? So we're going to add a space and put the quote without a space here. That way it'll put that username or the table here, and it'll be right next to ID. So this will say select all from user where user ID equals, and that fixes this one. So if we come over and we copy from here to here, we can come down and do the same thing on any others that uses where ID. So let's just look at let's scroll down and look. Okay. Insert into, this is just the create, it's not there. But in this one, this is the update function because you're going to say update. So this is the insert or create. This is the update where we can come over here to the where clause and we can just paste that in. Now, notice that we need to get rid of the space on this side and we need to make sure we add a space on this side. Okay, or if you copied it, if you did it better, you wouldn't have to, but just make sure there's a space there and there's no space there. All right, let's scroll down and see if we have any more. Okay, right here from the delete, let's do the same thing here. Make sure our spaces are right, they look good. So for right now, I think we're okay. Let's hit save. Again, this one here we might have to look at. Oh, this says this is how we're excluding the ID from the attributes, from the columns. So it takes all the columns except the ID column. So we'll want to add it here also. So it'll take all the columns except the table column. So all right, so this should work for here under this public function attribute. I've just created a new ID, a new variable called new ID, and I set it equal to the static variable, that table name, and I just concatenated on the end the word ID. So now when it goes through, it will say if the column, okay, so we went and got all the columns, if the column compares to this new ID, just keep going. Otherwise, skip that column. Okay. So, and it returns all the attributes. So what this is doing is getting all the attributes, but we don't want to get that, that ID attribute. So it's going to go through and look and see if it has all the attributes. That should work. If it doesn't, we'll have to keep going and look at another option. So that, you know what, let's do one other thing real quick. If you go to initialize, and at the very bottom of initialize, well, not at the bottom, but there's two things. Remember, we have our user class. We did that in class. We made our user class. Here you'll want to make and change it to user under require once. Okay. You'll also, at the very bottom, remember we said we need to add a line for each class that we were going to do, and this we would just change to user. Well, the way it should really work is, because database object, all the other classes extend this database object, okay? In initialize, we can just do it one time here and say any child class under database object can just extend that, and we'll set the database. So we don't have to put all of them here. We'll just put database object right there, and it'll extend that class.